Welcome to the PRSS 111 Introduction to Provider Enrollment PE training session. During this session, we'll introduce the provider enrollment process, identify the different enrollment types, and provide guidance on the documentation that providers need to prepare prior to enrolling. Then we'll show you an overview of what the provider enrollment application looks like and how to submit it. My name is Melanie, and I will be presenting the session today. So our agenda today, we will go over a brief welcome and opening. We will then jump into Provider Enrollment Wizard Part 1, accessing the PE Wizard and managing enrollment applications. Then we'll jump into Part 2 of our session, Provider Enrollment Wizard. We'll complete an enrollment application. Then we'll go over the next steps after submission. We'll do a revalidation overview, and then we will wrap everything up. So our learning objectives today in the provider enrollment or PE application, we want to identify criteria needed to complete an enrollment application. We'll go over submitting a PE application. We will explain the next steps after an application is submitted, and we will make sure you understand revalidation from the provider's perspective. So our first section today, we will go over accessing the PE Wizard and managing an enrollment application. So the PE Wizard is to align with CMS guidelines to manage Virginia Medicaid provider new enrollments and revalidations. Virginia Medicaid providers and DMAS PE clerks will use the PE Wizard to submit these applications. So let's take a look at the PE homepage now and show you how to access the PE Wizard. So here we are at the home page. So you'll log into MES, you will access PRSS, and then to access the PE Wizard, you will go from Menu to Provider Enrollment, and then New Enrollment Entry. So providers will have an option on this first page to generate a customized pre-checklist that identifies the credentials and documents required to complete that particular enrollment application. So this option is not available on the version that the PE clerks use. So if we scroll down, here's our welcome page. And if we scroll down, here is our enrollment pre-checklist that we can see. And we have our option here to generate the pre-checklist. So the first step is completing registration information. So we are going to go ahead, and here we have our welcome to the online provider enrollment system. We're going to go ahead and click start. So here is our registration screen. So this information will be used to track your application and be able to resume an application if you started it but need to complete it later. So the email you provide here is just for the application. Any notifications sent to this email will be related to this application only. This email can be different than the one used to access the provider portal and receive notifications after the enrollment process is complete. So we'll show you that area of the application a little bit later. So I'm going to go ahead and enter in my email address. We're going to confirm it. I'm going to enter in a password. And I want to point out here, there's a field, provider reference field. And this is an optional field that can be referenced to help identify the enrollment application. So it's particularly helpful for delegates enrolling multiple providers. So I'm going to go ahead and click register at this point over here in the right-hand corner. Now, the system will generate an application tracking number, or an ATN, and a message confirming the registration is complete. So here's our registration complete, and with our application tracking number, and it confirms our email address here. So an email is automatically sent to the email you just entered, and it will include your ATN and a password hint. So it'll include the first and last characters of your password. This information will be used to access and track the application. If your application is not submitted and is inactive for 30 days, it will expire. A courtesy reminder to submit your application is sent 15 days prior to expiration. So if your application expires, an application expiration notice will be sent, and you will have to start a new application. So I want to point out up here, our ATN followed us. So we have our tracking number up here in the top left-hand corner of the screen. And it is going to be the number used to track this specific application. So I'm going to go ahead and fill out the initial enrollment information. At this point, we're going to select Group. And I want to point out this window here. Once you've saved the information on this page, you will not be able to change the enrollment type. So you want to make sure that when you're picking your enrollment type that you do pick the correct enrollment type, because in order to change that, you would have to go through and start a whole new application. So I want to also point out the application is dynamic and will only display the step you need based on the information you provide during the various steps. So the step you are working on is highlighted with bold text, as we can see up here, so that you always know where you are in the process. Now you must complete the steps in sequential order, and to navigate to a previous step, you would click the specific tile for a completed step. So I want to point out up here too, there's a little blue question mark. That's our PE Wizard help, and it's located on each step of the application. So before we continue with the application, let's see what you recall. So our first question: what menu option is selected to reset an enrollment password? Is it Enrollment Status, Manage Password, or Resume Revalidate Enrollment? The correct answer is B, Manage Password. Our second question: your password for provider enrollment is or will be the same as your provider portal password. Is this true or false? The correct answer is false. A pre-enrollment checklist is required before starting your enrollment application. Is this true or false? The correct answer is false. It is not a requirement before starting a registration, but it is strongly recommended. Our fourth question: when does a new enrollment application that has not been submitted expire? After 30 days of inactivity, after 60 days of inactivity, after 90 days, or never? The correct answer is after 30 days of inactivity. Our next section is the PE Wizard Part 2. We're going to go over completing an enrollment application. So before we jump into this, I'd like to take a look at some examples. So these are some of the steps that you may see and the types of information that you may need to provide. The enrollment process in the PE Wizard has various steps that you must complete in a particular order to submit your enrollment application. So the PE Wizard dynamically adjusts based on your responses throughout the application, such as enrollment type, provider type, and specialty. So some of the steps are always required regardless of the response. So any of the required steps are noted on this slide in blue with asterisks. So as you can see, the general information is a required step, specialties is a required step, service location is a required step, and depending on what information you put in these three steps, these three windows will appear, and you can see they are not required. Step 7, credentials, is a required step. Step 9, other, is required. Disclosures is required. Attachments, and agree and submit. So for the purposes of this demonstration, we will address all possible steps. So now let's resume the application we started earlier. First, we'll need the ATN located in our email. And in the registration email, you'll look for the ATN. We will need this number and the password we created to get back into the application that was started. So hopefully you remember your password because this email only provides a hint with the first and last characters. The rest are hidden. However, as you learned in the first demo, if you forget, you can always reset the password. Now that we have our ATN, let's go back to the PE Wizard and show you how to resume the application. All right, so now that we have our ATN, let's go back to the PE Wizard and show you how to resume the application. So we're in the training environment and we are going to go to Menu, Provider Enrollment, and then Resume Revalidate Enrollment. And we'll go ahead and enter in our ATN. And our password. And then we will click Resume. All right, so it takes us back to the general information page. So when the application is resumed, it'll open up to the most recent page. When we stopped the application before, we were on the general information step. So from here, we are going to go ahead and we will choose our enrollment type. And we get this pop-up and it says, once you've saved the information on this page, you will not be able to change the enrollment type. Please confirm your selection before proceeding. So we're going to go ahead and click OK because we want to choose a group provider. But if we had mistakenly chosen a group provider and we needed to choose an individual and we had passed this step, we would have to start a new enrollment. So just want to point that out, that it's important that we make sure we pick the correct enrollment type. So we will go ahead and select a group practice for our provider type. And again, once you've saved the information on this page, you will not be able to change the provider type. So we want to make sure we choose the correct information. Otherwise, we will have to start a new enrollment. So effective date is generally the date of the application and is the first date on which a provider may be reimbursed for eligible services. Provider information allows individual or business information depending on the type of application. So we selected group here. So if applying as an individual and an individual within a group or IG provider, you would select individual as the enrollment type to complete a single combined application. Only one service location may be added for a combined application. So we are going to go ahead and scroll down here and we'll enter in our legal business name. And we'll tab through to our NPI. We'll go ahead and enter in an NPI because we can see by that blue asterisk that it is a required field. All right, and then we will go ahead and enter in our EIN number. And we are going to answer no to the enrollment questions here. So I'm going to select FFS and MCO for accept patients in the following programs. And then please select the programs to which you are applying. You must choose at least one. So I'm going to go ahead and select both of our Aetna options here so you can see how to choose two options. So you would just click inside the field and then that drop down appears. Now I do want to point out that select dental providers have alternate program options and any MCO program selected will be sent to the MCO portal for review after the application is approved. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll down and we will enter in our contact information. And I am purposefully choosing a faulty address. So we will go ahead and enter in our phone information. Oh, as you can see, the address is matched against the Postal Service, and you can see that it has pointed out that our address is invalid. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm going to go ahead and hit yes for continue, but this is an extra precaution. It lets you know if the address is incorrect. So we're going to go ahead and select yes, and we're going to scroll back down to our contact information. We will select a phone number. And we're going to just select mail as our preferred communication. Now we're going to go ahead and select save and continue. Now I want to point out up here at the very top, we have this progress bar. And as you can see, it changes, it moves forward with each step that you complete. So you can see exactly where you're at within the application. So right now, we've moved from our general information step and we are now on our specialty step. If at any point you wanted to go back and correct or update a previous tab, you can click the tile. So we can click our general information tile and go back to it. And as you can see here, our group and our provider are grayed out. So we are unable to change those. So if we did need to change them, we would have to restart the enrollment. So we'll go ahead and move to our specialties tile or specialties window. And I want to point out here, you have your help that moves with you throughout the application. It's located on each step. And next to that, we have our print preview option right here. It's the black box at the top right part of the page, and it can be used at any point in the application process. So you can print a partial application if you need to stop and have questions. And you can also print after the application is submitted. So we're now at the specialties step. So if we scroll down, we can see our specialties table here. So if we were going to add a specialty, because we can see it's blank, we would click Create New up here in the top right-hand corner, and our new specialty window pops up. So we are going to go ahead and add a specialty. So we click the drop down, or we click the field and a drop down menu appears. So we're going to select our specialty and we will select our taxonomy and we will just choose today's date as the effective date. We're going to go ahead and click Save at this point. And you can see the specialty is here. So it's now been added to our table. And if we needed to update that, we would click this pencil and we can edit our specialty. So we're going to go ahead and click cancel and we'll scroll down and here is our taxonomy table. And as you can see, it's blank. So if we needed to create an additional taxonomy, we would do that here. We get our new taxonomy window. We can choose our taxonomy, our applicable taxonomy from the drop down, and then we can click save. So I want to point out, we will go ahead and save and continue because I want to show you something. We get an error message. So it tells us at least one primary specialty must be entered. And if we scroll down to our specialties table, we can see this primary field is blank. So if we needed to go in and update that, we would click this pencil and we would click this box here that says make primary. So we can make that specialty primary. Or if we had multiple, we could select the one that we wanted to make primary. So now we are going to go ahead and save and continue. And I want to point out that only one specialty can be selected as primary. So now we're at the service location step. So we are going to scroll down and here's our service location table. So we're going to create new up in the top right-hand corner of our service location table. And our new service location window appears. As you can see, we have to make at least one service location primary. So we will go ahead and click that box and then we will enter in our information. And again, we get that pop-up saying the address has been validated and it is invalid. So we are going to go ahead and keep the address for the purposes of this demonstration. And if we scroll down once we've entered the address in, we get our phone number table. So we are going, and it tells you at least one phone number must be provided. So we are going to go to Create New up in the top right-hand corner of the table, and we will enter in our phone information. And then we will click Save. So we will scroll down and we're going to answer no to these questions, and we will just put 24-hour here. And then we scroll down, we get our service address information. So accepting new patients, we will go ahead and say yes, and then we will put no restrictions on gender. I'm going to go ahead and select save at this point, and we didn't move forward. So if we scroll up, you can see here, hours of operation details must be provided. So we're going to scroll back down and we can see our hours of operation here. So we're going to go ahead and click that box and it opens up a table. Now we're going to create new in the top right hand corner of that table, and we can see here these are required fields. So we're going to go ahead and we'll just choose every day and we'll select 24 hours. We've got a hardworking practice. Okay, so and you can see here there's a little pencil so we can edit the information if we need. So we're going to go ahead and click save. Oh, we will just pick a county. And again, we're going to get that invalid and we'll mark yes. We'll scroll down and we'll hit save and continue or save. And then as you can see here, here's our service location information. And we selected it as primary, so we have an X in that box. So I want to mention that individuals within a group only answer the service address information questions. The other questions do not display as they are completed by the group provider that will be identified later in the application. So PTPS, or provider type provider service, determines whether an additional service location may be added. If the application is limited, the button grays out after the primary service location is added. And service location must be a valid USPS address. Now, dental providers, again, will have a few additional questions regarding services for children with special needs. So at this point, we're going to click Save and Continue, and we're going to move forward to our addresses step. So individuals within a group are not prompted for address information. ORPs only include the mail to address, and addresses not applicable to your enrollment may be left blank. So we are actually going to scroll down to our addresses window, and as you can see here, here is our pay to address information. So what we're going to do for the purposes of this demonstration, you can select here this checkbox. You can select same as service location. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And as you will see, the system will automatically pull the service location from the previous information. So again, we're going to select for phone number and email down here. We're going to select same as service location. So it dynamically adjusts. So it pulls over the previous information. So we're going to scroll down to our mail to window. And again, we're going to do the same thing. We will select same as service location. Now, since our pay to information is filled in, we can select either or. It'll pull over either or. So we're going to go ahead and just choose our service location. And here it's filled in the fields. So again, for the phone number, we will go ahead and select same as service location. And as you can see, it pulls over our phone information for us. So we are going to go ahead and select save and continue. So I want to mention the addresses may be added or edited through the provider portal after enrollment approval. So the next step that we have, mail to, email address should be entered. So we are going to scroll down here. Aha, and see, I selected email. So I want to point out, if you did not enter an email earlier and choose the contact option as email, you will get an error like we just did. So you either need to include an email in the service location step or not use the same as service location option here. So I wanted to point that out. So we're going to go ahead and switch this to mail and then scroll down and hit save and continue because we didn't enter an email on the service location step. So now the next window that we have available is our organizations step. So I want to mention that individuals within a group and ORPs do not have this step. So we are going to go ahead and complete this step. And again, for the purposes of this demo, I'm just selecting options. But as you can see here, these are our different drop-down options here. And we have our entities information here. So we are going to go ahead and select Save and Continue. And that will take us to our association step. So I want to mention here that individual only providers will leave association step blank. IGs, whether completing a combined app or an IG only app, are required to enter at least one group association. So groups can optionally associate with individuals. Facilities and ORPs can optionally associate with each other. Atypical providers do not have this step, and we will leave this step blank for this group provider, and we're going to go ahead and switch to an application for an individual within a group. And to save time so that you don't have to watch me fill out each field for every step, from this point on, I'm going to show you applications that have been filled out but not yet submitted. So we're going to switch to an IG application so that you can see what their association step looks like. All right, so here we have our individual within a group application, and we are at the association step. So here we have our associations table. So to add an association, we would go over here in the top right corner of our table and we would click Create New. And here we can see we can search by provider location ID or NPI. I am going to go ahead and enter in an NPI. And then we will click Search. Now our new group association window pops up. Here's our search criteria. We searched by NPI and here's our NPI. And as you can see, here are the different search results that we have. So I'm going to go ahead and select our first option here, and all of the information is automatically pulled over except for the effective date. We will have to enter in the effective date. So I'll go ahead and just put today's date as the effective date so you can see what this will look like. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save. And we can see that association has now been added. So that is how we would add an association. Now let's switch to a group provider and take a look at the credentials step. So I'm going to go ahead and enter in my ATN number for my group provider. And my password. So we'll go ahead and enter in our password here. And we will click Resume. Now we will go ahead and open up our credentials step. We are now in a facility application. So this step is hidden if not applicable based on provider type, provider service. Sections in this step vary based on provider type, provider service, or PTPS. DEA only applies to pharmacies, and effective dates must be in the past. Now, if a credential does not expire, enter December 31st, 9999 as the end date. So we're going to go ahead and scroll down, and you can see here our license table has already been filled out. If we needed to edit any information, there's this pencil here. If we wanted to create a new license, we would click Create New, and we would enter in our license information. I'm going to go ahead and click Cancel. We'll scroll down. Here's our Medicare participation table. And here's the table, and you can see we already have the information filled out. If we wanted to take a look at the information, we can click that edit pencil, and we can see the information that's loaded. And if we needed to change any information, we have those fields available. So I'm going to go ahead and click Cancel, and we'll scroll back down. We'll take a look. Here's our last field, our Medicaid program, and we would just answer yes or no. As we can see, it's a required field. So we're going to go ahead and scroll up to the top of our application, and the next step we would have available is our provider type step. And I want to point out this step is hidden if not applicable based on provider type, provider service. So it is hidden here. So for providers with clinical laboratory improvement amendments or CLIA information, the CLIA number will be entered during that step. So the next step that we have to look at here is our other step. So we're going to go ahead and open that up, the window for the other step, the other information. And we'll scroll down and you can see what information is required here. So we have a languages field. And again, to edit that information, we have our pencils over on the right hand side. We have our create new up here if we wanted to add another language. And we have our options here in the drop down. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel. We have our additional information, our website address, electronic claims submission participation, our claims signature waiver, and our paper remittance advice. So that's the information that's required on the others information. So the next step that we would have available would be our electronic funds transfer or EFT step. And that would be, in this case, we don't because individuals within a group and ORPs do not have this step as they are not billing providers. Also, if the NPI is already associated with a service location on another Virginia Medicaid enrollment application with EFT, this step will be hidden. The linked EFT will be used for the new service location. So when revalidating or re-enrolling, the EFT page does not display. EFT changes can be submitted through the provider portal outside of the revalidation period. So I want to point out too, we have these expand and collapse icons at the right hand side of the screen. So we can expand and collapse sections as we complete them. That way we know they've been completed. The next step we're going to take a look at is our disclosures step. So I want to mention that the status for each disclosure changes to completed once it's been added, and the application cannot continue to the next page until all disclosures are completed. So we're going to go ahead and scroll down here. You can see our disclosures table, and you can see in the status column, all of these are showing completed. So I'm going to actually click on our subcontractor disclosure so you can see what kind of information is asked for. So here's our owner information, our owner table, and the type of information that is needed. So we're going to go ahead and cancel out of this. And let me take a look. So we can click create new on the ownership and control so I can show you those questions as well. So here's the type of questions that are asked regarding a new ownership and control interest. And again, our table, here's our percentage interest and our additional information. So I'm going to go ahead and scroll down to the bottom and we will click cancel since all of these have been completed. We will take a look at our background check step. So fingerprint requirements only apply to high-risk providers and doula providers. So if fingerprints are needed, a notification letter will be generated during the application review process. So I'll scroll down and show you the table. So here's the table with the kinds of information that is requested. So the next step we're going to take a look at is our attachments step. And I'm going to scroll down and you can see here provider type and specialty follows you through the application. Here's our additional information. Here's our required attachments fields, a table. And you can see here requirement met is already yes for the example, but they will always start as no. And the application cannot continue to the next page until all attachment requirements are met. So these are required attachments and you can see them listed here. And then if we scroll down to our attachment details, you can see the attachment types are listed here and they've all been uploaded, which has changed this requirement to yes. So if we wanted to add an attachment, we would come over here to our attachments table. If one of these said no, like license and certification, if that said no, we would come down here to our attachment details table. We would click create new. We would select electronic only. And then in our drop down menu here, we can find, if we scroll down, we can find that license and certification, and then we would upload the file from our computer. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel. I just wanted to show you how to update the attachments. So the next step we're going to take a look at is our fees tile here. We're going to go ahead and say no because this is just for demonstration purposes. So the fees step, let's scroll down here. So there's an application fee. So if an application fee was due, in this case there's no fee, but if an application fee was due, the payment processor will open in a new window. So if online is selected, if a fee was due and we selected online, the payment processor will open in a new window. And if you decide to complete payment through the payment processor, be sure to return to the PE Wizard to finish the application. So fees are only applicable to high-risk providers who have not already submitted payment to Medicare or another state Medicaid program. So if you completed these payments, answer the questions on that page to submit your fee waiver request. So we're going to go ahead and scroll back up. We have our agree and submit step here. So I do want to point out that individual within a group applications will have a blank service location. The group's information will be applied to the approved application. Terms and conditions verify that the information in your application is accurate, that the submitter is authorized to complete the application, that future changes related to provider information will be shared with the Virginia Medicaid program, and that the submitter understand the state policies. Provider portal registration will be optional for IGs who designate an authorized administrator or an AA. If an IG declines access during the application, the IG will not be able to access their provider information electronically and will need to work with their group for updates. Provider portal credentials and associated notifications are only created once. Additional service locations will not receive notifications. Provider portal emails may only be associated with one provider. And if the provider already has an account with the same NPI, the service location will be added to the existing account. If the email is already associated with a provider portal account for a different NPI, credentials will not be generated. The request verification code is a one-time email to verify the submitter's identity before submission. The submitter needs access to the inbox to submit the application. So that we can use this application for future sessions, we aren't going to actually submit this one, but if we did want to submit it, we would click this submit button over here in the right-hand corner of the application. So I will show you what it'll look like in just a moment. So here's our submit confirmation window. And I want to point out this number, this tracking number is our ATN. Also, we have our application fee form link. So if a fee is still due, the application fee form link will display below the ATN. We also have our print preview option up here in the top right-hand corner. You can view a PDF copy of the application by clicking that print preview. So when you click Print Preview, the pop-up automatically has all sections selected. You may deselect sections if you do not want to include them in the PDF. Then click Print to generate a PDF that you can save or print. So our next section is our next steps after submission. So after you've submitted your application, you can check the status of the application. So to do this, you'll go to the PE homepage, click Menu, click Provider Enrollment, and then click Enrollment Status. When the Enrollment Status page appears, enter the ATN and password for this application and click Submit. The system will display the enrollment status for the application. After a determination has been made on the application, you will receive one or more notifications. So we have here our return to provider or RTP. So if your application is returned for corrections, you will receive a notification with the changes that need to be made. This includes providing an additional attachment or editing responses. You have 30 days to make the corrections and resubmit your application. If not completed by the deadline, your application will be denied. We have here our denial notification. So if your application is denied, you will receive a notification with reasons that your application was denied. You are not enrolled in the Virginia Medicaid program. Now, if you're able to address the denial reasons, you may submit a new enrollment application. You may receive an approval notification. So if your application is approved, you'll receive notification of your approval, and ongoing provider maintenance will be conducted in Provider Portal. If you selected to apply for any MCO programs in the General Information section of your application and participation request is submitted to the MCOs. Now, you may receive a Provider Portal notification. So if you do not already have Provider Portal credentials for your NPI, you will receive two emails, one with your username and one with your password. So if you already have Provider Portal credentials, for example, you completed an application for a new service location for your NPI, you will not receive additional credential information. Instead, the new service location will be matched based on your NPI, and both locations will display in Provider Portal. So I want to stress, if you need to assign delegates for the new location, complete the steps in Provider Portal, as delegate access is not automatically applied. So now it's time to find out what you recall. We have a quick quiz of 4 questions. So our first question, if your application is returned for corrections, how long do you have to submit revisions? Is it 1 week, 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days? The correct answer is 30 days. So this applies to new enrollments and revalidations. Our next question, what information is needed to check the status for an enrollment application? Is it the ATN and enrollment password, ATN and NPI, ATN and provider portal password? The correct answer is ATN and enrollment password. Our next question, provider portal credentials are only sent after an enrollment application is approved. Is this true or false? The correct answer is true. So pending applications are not reflected in Provider Portal. Provider Portal credential notifications are sent for each service location. Is this true or false? The correct answer is false. Provider Portal credentials are only sent for the first service location for the NPI. So our next section is revalidation. So we'll briefly go over the revalidation overview process. Now we're going to talk about revalidation. So in accordance with the ACA Provider Enrollment and Screening Regulations, all Virginia Medicaid providers are required to revalidate their enrollment information at least every 5 years. So you will need to review the information in the revalidation application to ensure the information is still accurate, update all necessary sections, and submit the revalidation before your program expires. 90 days before your Virginia Medicaid program is set to expire, you will be notified that it is time to revalidate your enrollment. Notification will come in the form of 2 emails or letters based on the communication preferences you indicated in your enrollment application, or whatever the current preference is in the provider portal if you have updated it after your application was approved. So one notice will include your ATN and the other will include your password. Now you don't need to create new ones like you did for your initial enrollment. You will also receive reminder notifications at 60 days and 30 days prior to your contract expiring. Failure to complete the revalidation may result in termination from the Virginia Medicaid program. So for more information about the revalidation process and how to complete it using the PE Wizard, watch the PRSS 122 Enrollment Revalidation for Providers video on the provider training page. So we've got 2 additional questions based on the section we just went over. So our first question, you must create a new password for revalidation. Is this true or false?
So the correct answer is false. One of the two revalidation notifications will include the password. And our last question, what information is needed to resume or revalidate an enrollment application? Is it the ATN and enrollment password, ATN and NPI, or the ATN and the provider portal password? So the correct answer is the ATN and enrollment password. So in summary, we've identified criteria needed to complete an enrollment application, we've submitted a PE application, and we've gone over the next steps after an application is submitted. I'd like to thank you for attending the session today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.